All right, everyone. Welcome to today's conversation around the future of B2B sales. Sorry about that little hiccup with chat. I don't know why it was disabled initially, but we're good to go now. So I am Matt, and I've got just a couple of quick housekeeping items to get through before we get started. So first and foremost, today's session is designed to be a conversation. Our panelists are going to share tons of great content, a lot of great info, but more important, we want to hear from you. So as you're already doing, feel free to use the chat on the right-hand side of the screen, say hi, interact with one another, share info, whatever you want. You'll also see that there is a Q&A button. If you've got questions for our panelists, feel free to drop them into the Q&A window. You can upvote other people's questions. If there's something that really resonates with you, give it a thumbs up. We'll tackle as many of those as we can in real time, and we'll grab the rest of those during the Q&A session at the end. So please use that Q&A tab to ask any questions you have. One last thing. This webinar will be available on demand once we're done today. And after the event, you'll receive an email with a survey, of course, and some additional content to download. So keep an eye out for that. If you need anything else, I will be available in the chat. So please feel free to reach out. And with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Tab Norris. Tab is the Vice President of Sales and the co-founder of Aslan, and he's got more years than he'd like to admit in the trenches with both frontline sales leaders and with sales reps, and that has helped grow the company from a basement to an industry leader. Tab, my friend, thanks so much for being here, and take it away.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. We are really looking forward to today's conversation. I'm grateful for everyone joining us. Before we dive in, I really wanted to introduce who's going to be participating today, our panelists. First and foremost, I know several of you know Tom Stanfill. He is the other co-founder of Aslan and the CEO of Aslan. Also world-renowned author of the book Unreceptive.
World-renowned.
It's in 73 languages, I think. A better way to sell, lead, and influence. Tom, welcome.
Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for the introduction.
Yes, I could say so much more, but we don't have time.
Usually when we have more time, you share more interesting details and facts and stories.
Trying to keep it tight.
Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome, Tom. We also have Randy Riemersma with us. And Randy has been a connected with Aslan, I think, Randy, since like about 2013. Yep. Different roles. He's played some different consulting roles with us, but he is an expert in the world of enterprise technical sales. I mean, everything from carrying a bag to leadership. He most recently has been the VP of sales for the enterprise sales unit at Salesforce. Had the same role with Site Tracker, which is a SaaS company. Really excited, Randy, to have you to be here, be part of the panel. Welcome.
Tab, always excited to be here with my brothers and sisters from Aslan and the community. And anytime I can share a little bit of the scar tissue I've built up over the years with other people to help them out, I am all in.
Awesome. Well,
so glad you're here. Randy, I thought about doing this webinar together, and I've had this thought early this morning. I said, if I were going to pursue an opportunity, there is no one I would rather have on my team than you.
Wow, that's
brilliant. He's like a brilliant strategic mind. So, and I'm like, well, why don't I have him involved in more deals that we're working on? So, we were hanging out recently. I'm like, you need to join this podcast. There's so much to offer. A lot of scar tissue.
We're moving in the right direction, Tom.
Yeah.
That's right. We're going to have him much.
I think I just said podcast tab. I think a webinar. Sorry.
Yeah, webinar. So, well, let's talk about what we're here for today. I'm doing a little introduction, then I'm going to let Tom kind of take it away. But the reason we wanted to do this webinar is we wanted to share the results from a year-long research project. Yeah. We just completed up on the future of business-to-business sales. It was fascinating. And the reason we did it was we were seeing a consistent decline in sellers hitting quota. I mean, for instance, I know, Tom, was like 2024, it was 67% of reps said that they would not hit their quota.
Yeah.
Which we found really fascinating. So what we did is we partnered with Selling Power, and as well as some leading thought leaders in selling, like McKinsey, Alexander Group, Forrester, Harvard professors, different authors, and a ton of Aslan's own research. I mean, obviously thousands of customer interactions we've been able to to dig into. So we're really excited to kind of have this conversation today. And Tom, this is your baby. I mean, you ran this thing. And so I'm going to kind of throw it to you and tell us what you've learned. Kick us off.
Yeah, it's really came from almost a selfish desire to figure out what was going on, because we just sensed that the deals are stalling at a greater pace, or more percentage of deals are stalling, fewer wins. It just harder to get meetings, and like, is this really real? Is this what we're experiencing, what everybody experienced? So we started this research again, at the beginning of 2024. And I was actually shocked by the outcome. I know we've talked about this on one of our podcasts, but I was actually shocked by the outcome. But there is good news. If we embrace this new reality, which we're going to unpack, and that's the next thing we're going to talk about, is kind of what we found, and with the changes in buyer behavior, it's really an opportunity, right? So it's an opportunity. It's not easier, but it is an opportunity. So I want to talk about what we've learned and what that means to sellers and leaders. So let's just dive in and unpack it. So there was sort of, as I talk about the new reality, there was really 5 sort of big themes that came out of our research. And some of this isn't going to surprise us, but it's like when you look at all 5, it's like, it's not about the category so much as it's the increase in each of these buckets. Number one, and this is not in priority, right? They're just 5. Decision fatigue. 73% of buyers say they're overwhelmed with options. Now that's obvious. I mean, I was looking for, somebody gave me a credit to Nike for a birthday gift. And I'm like, just looking, there was like hundreds of shoes to try to pick in a certain category. And that's just one man. We're just got so much option. So a lot of times what that means is we end up going with what we already know, or the leader. So there's decision fatigue. Virtual is a reality. Like 86% of the buyers, decision makers, prefer to meet virtually, right? So it's harder to differentiate. It's harder to demonstrate value. The engagement goes down. I mean, I've been in meetings. I know you guys have probably seen this too. All of a sudden, you got this big meeting where normally you would have been on site and there would have been a lot of engagement and conversation before the meeting and after the meeting, and you jump on the meeting and the meeting's half the time it used to be, and everybody turns their camera off.
Oh, it's the worst.
Which is just fun, and then you're staring at a bunch of boxes. Yeah, and it's more difficult to again demonstrate the value that you offer. So virtual reality. Then you've got stakeholder complexity, more people. And I think this is because of the shift to virtual. It's easier to have more people in meetings. So more people get involved, right? So, so that becomes more complex. So it's harder to determine who's got the most influence and what are the different decision drivers and how do we gain access. So I think the latest stat was there's 4+ decision makers involved in, and I know the word decision maker may not be accurate, influencers, stakeholders involved when assessing opportunities or solution providers.
And Tom, have you noticed this?
Yeah.
On top of that, I think it's slowing things down because of that. If you know, I just had this last week. We were moving forward, and all of a sudden there was one other person wanted to be involved. So now it's pushed. It's 3.5 weeks before we can get that person on the call. We were going to have a decision. Now it's almost a month late for that one reason. That is.
I think that's true. I think, there's more people involved. Yeah, and it's also because, and this goes back to virtual. You have less time, so people don't get the information they want. And I would say on average, meetings are half the time that they used to be. So people can't, they don't spend the time, and then they have meetings afterwards, and then it just doesn't. They don't have more information. And so it's just harder to get that done. Number 4, self-service trend, right? Through AI, right, or whatever information is available, I can just go get the information. I don't want to talk to a rep. So it's more difficult to build value and get a meeting because they're like, well, I'll just get what I need virtually or digitally. Then number 5, information overload. Increased amount of information. This stat really surprised me. 74x the amount of information increase that we are getting on a daily basis in the last decade. So obviously it's harder to get attention. And here's the other thing that I realized, and I was doing some research for the book. When you have too much information, you have to develop biases because you can't assimilate all the biases. And so, in more information doesn't change the bias, right? So it's people have to develop biases. Funny, I'm looking, building a house, as you know, Tab and Randy, and this will be my kind of first time building a house that I really like, my final house probably. And so I'm looking for appliances, right? And the amount of information available on appliances. And then when I go out and look in the market, it kind of relates to all of these is, AI ChatGPT tells me one thing about appliances, right? And then I look in Google tells me something different about appliances. Then I go to appliance dealers and they tell me something different. So what am I going to do? I'll probably just end up probably just going with the number one appliance. Like, well, okay, what's the number one? I'll just stick with that. Or I may just delay. But ultimately, it's all of these things are playing less time, less engagement. So let's do a poll and kind of see where the audience is related to what they think is the biggest challenge or biggest barrier to being successful and hitting the quota.
I can't wait to see what this goes back.
Yeah.
I'm the same. I'm anxious to see what.
I'm sure we all have like a horse we're betting on.
Yeah, I'll.
I know my number one.
What's yours, Tab?
Mine's selling virtually, the virtual reality part.
Yeah.
I mean, but that is rocked my world. Probably because I'm old. I've sold one way my whole life, and all of a sudden now I'm talking to boxes. I'm used to being on site, on the ground, and I mean, we still do that, but not nearly.
Well, I think it's also kind of the way that companies like us sell. It's like there's a lot of work that we do on site to understand the organization. We like to make a recommendation, not a presentation, and it's harder to do that. It's also what we sell is a little bit less tangible. Okay, so here's the results.
Yeah. So stakeholder complexity, interesting.
I totally get that one because, you said it's like 4+, and I think the emphasis is on the plus because it's like, you get a complex deal. And I know in my world, you could have 6 or 7 people that are actually like voting influencers on an opportunity.
Yeah.
Number one, how do I as a sales rep get to all those people? How do I bridge a relationship to them? How do I understand what's going on to them? And I also found, I'd love to guys get your perspective on this. When you have that many people involved, the requirements kind of go to a least common denominator. How do they make everybody happy? And then as a sales rep, how do I differentiate in that? Right? Because we've diluted the need so bad because I can't offend Timmy and Sally needs this. And I think I told that was going to be my favorite.
Which is why deals stall, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then who's the real champion? Because sometimes the champion moves around kind of the role.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much. Well, it also points back to if you're not the number one in the category, it points back to why people are struggling, because then you go with the safest option when you can't make everybody happy. You go with the data.
I think it's either that or you go with it puts a even heavier emphasis on referrals, or you go to somebody that you trust. You go, I'm confused, Randy. I've looked at so many SaaS companies. What in the heck should I do? And
I have a firm belief on this one. The decision gets made at the end based on risk. What is not going to go wrong, right? I'm about to put I know in my world, like we'd be selling $500,000, $1 million software solutions. People lose jobs if it goes poorly, right? With all this complexity at the end, you're like, which one's not going to break? That's the one I want.
That's right. So let's talk about the solution. So this is the problem. It's great to see that the feedback from the audience.
A lot of good conversation in chat.
Yeah. Let's talk about the solution, because there is good news here, right? If we understand not only how the decision makers are less receptive to alternatives, right? Maybe then the alternatives they're considered, whether referrals or the number one. But it's also, there's another factor at play. There's the emotional. All this has an impact on the emotions, right? Because emotions have play a huge role in decision making. So let's look at how the customer's receptivity has declined and what do we need to do about that. So if you kind of think about information and the noise in the market, the availability of the information, the amount of information, the noise in the market, since the 50s, I mean, it's just, this graph is probably not even accurate, all right, because the line is just has gone up so much information, right? So what's happened is, as we've been talking about, all of these things that we're discussing has driven down receptivity, right? It's harder to get attention. There's they less rely on sellers to get their information, right? People don't even, I mean, you just don't even respond to all the emails that you get, or all the noise you get. It's almost like the door's closed to all information. So the receptivity's decline. So what we've been doing as a sales organization is we just keep trying to get better, right? Of converting the fewer and fewer opportunities. It started off with features, advantages, benefits. I think that was developed in the 50s. Then the new in the 80s, we came up with spend sell. We didn't, but spend selling came out. Then it was about solution selling, right? And then we had challenger and insight selling. Now it's all about AI, right? And all of these methodologies, tools, etc., are important. But what they don't address is this big box of unreceptive customers.
Hey, that's the name of a book I read.
Yeah, that's the name of the book. Yeah, and then, this is the premise of the book. And here's the reality of when someone's unreceptive, the traditional approach not only works, it backfires. And what I mean by traditional approach, right? Let me give you a use case. Let me take you to court. Let me share with you the logical arguments as to why you need to consider this versus that. Right. And so that's what we think. Okay. So the value, creating value, communicating value prop, all those things are important. But when someone's unreceptive, the more you try to persuade them, the more closed they become. I want to say that again. When someone's emotionally unreceptive, and you're seeing this in the political arena, right? That's probably your best example. When somebody's closed to new information, the more you try to persuade them, the more closed they become. So what do? Right? You got two options. Most people think there's two options. You either fight or flee. And let me go to court. Let me prove my point. Or, okay, well, let me know when you're open. But what we actually need to do is we need to change our strategy. And the way I like to talk about this is if the soil's not fertile, you can't plant the seed, which is your message, right? So we've got to first create a receptive listener, a fertile soil before we can plant the seed, right? Because the customer, and this is the surprising truth. The customer's willingness to listen, or anybody's willingness to listen, is more important than your ability to communicate. So what we've got to do is learn some new skills, new role to create a receptive audience. So this is the solution to all the things that we're seeing. And I think people kind of knew intuitively that we need to change how we sell, but what we used to do kind of works. And what if change is hard. So let's just keep doing the same thing. And if it doesn't work quite as well, then I'll just do more of it. I think that's changed. Like the reality is we have to change our role. We have to change how we prospect and how we have to change how we communicate and influence. Do you guys agree with that?
100%.
And I think the reality of the slide, Tom, you have AI tools has just like the slope of that line goes way up, right? Think of the crap we're getting our emails. And and I'm going to kind of just repeat something you said before, because I think it is so critical to remember. If no one is listening, you aren't selling.
Yeah. And I'm not listening to these great AI emails that I'm getting. I'm getting really good, great, but I know it's AI. It's generic, but it's so much better than it used to be. But I'm just delete.
Yep. Very true.
Great point. So again, there is good news. If we change the way we change these three things, you're going to have an incredible competitive advantage. So we're going to talk about what reps need to do, and we're going to talk about what leaders need to do. The first thing we need to recognize is this is where we always start when we're working with an organization, is what's your, like I like to ask a rep a seller that when I'm meeting with them, what's your role? You're successful if you do what? How do you define that? What do you know? And so you get all kinds of information. Some people say, I'm here as a resource. If you need to know more about XYZ, I'm here. If you have a problem, I want them to call me. You get those kind of responses. You get people like, I'm supposed to push and sell this thing. It might be, I just need to make, okay, I'll be honest with you. I just want to make money. Right. So you get all kinds of some people, I want to help the customer. You get all kinds of of responses. But like in any professional arena, whether it's music or sports, there's levels, right? There's like in sports, there's the Pee Wee League, and then there's professional, right? Same thing with music, right? In sales, the same thing. The lowest level in sales is relationship manager or billboard. Relationship manager, and we all seen this. I kind of talk about it. These are the people. I talk about this sometimes. These are the people with the eyes on the side, not the hunters. The eyes in the front, right? Eyes on the side. They're a little bit more reactive. They're kind of more. You let me know what you need. They're responsive to the customer. The customer leads. They're comfortable with that. They manage the relationship. They're aligned with the customer. They are customer focused. But it's up to the customer to figure out their need, and then they'll respond. Right.
So Tom, you're talking about like a wolf, eyes in front, a cow, eyes on the side, right? Is that okay?
I probably didn't unpack that. Yeah, I think of it as animals. Like you think of the hunters in the world.
Yeah.
In the animal kingdom.
Yep.
You have the hunters in the world that the eyes are in front. I thought about this. And the ones that are hunted, the eyes are on the side. And relationship managers, as a personality trait, typically is more like the eyes are on the side. They're kind of more risk adverse. They're a little bit more reactive. Exactly, Tab. Or you have a billboard. Now, billboards are like, here, this is what they told me to tell you, and I'm just going to tell you. Hey, be aware we got a new thing out there. Be aware we've got a new campaign. Be aware that we've got a price discount. Be aware we got a new product. And then just be aware. Just letting you know, I'm out here bringing donuts by, checking in, seeing how you're doing. These are typically account managers. And then the sales rep is typically more of a hunter mentality, right? They're like trying to win, and they sell their favorite product. They sell the product they feel like they've got the best competitive advantage, but they're good at selling something, right? Selling a product, service, solution. Now we move to consultant. Consultant is more aligned at the business level, right? These are people that are seeing what's happening at the business level. They usually operate higher up in the organization, right? Where the business decisions are made. They don't just represent their product, service, or solution. They also understand the customer's role, but that's not the highest level. The highest level is a trusted partner. Tab, what's a trusted partner?
You get invited to the inner circle. You earn a seat at the table where things really happen, where you change beliefs. Yep. You are a resource. Like if they're going to make a decision, they want you involved. I mean,
you're part of the team. Hey,
Yeah.
we're thinking about doing XYZ. We're early in the process. We're planning. We trust you so much that you're a partner and that we believe we can't get to the destination without you. Right. So you're part of the team. Now, business, what's different than a trusted partner than a consultant? They have the same business mindset, but they don't have the level of trust. They also have the ability to change beliefs. Like when you start working in a B2B environment, you're talking to an executive who's got a strategy, and the strategy is what's helped them be successful. They're not going to change their strategy, or their biases or beliefs very easily. So they're very good at being able to have those conversations in a very other-centered way, as we say at Aslan. So they have a higher level of skills. And what we found, and Randy, I want to hear what your thoughts are about this. What we found is trusted partners. We studied this with a client recently, where we could access all these recorded calls. We put two control groups. We had reps that were 150% of quota and reps that were 75% or less than quota. And we listened to call. Listen, we didn't just do the AI thing. We listened to calls where they had to face the same customer challenge. They wanted to compare their solution to a competitive solution. The ones that operated as trusted partners outperformed the control group by 103%. I was fascinated by that.
Yep.
Randy, does that align with some of your data?
That was a tap.
No,
I
you go
said
ahead,
Randy. I said, does that align with kind of
No,
what you see when you think about your as a sales leader?
I just this is something that is so easy to gloss over, I think, and that people don't really understand. It's worth parking on this kind of 4-layer cake and understanding where you are. Having worked with you guys and gals at Aslan a long time, I've taken a lot of classes through this, and I always make people rate themselves. And it's amazing, you get to know these people in these classes. And my experience is most people round up a level. Right? But on this trust,
95% of college professors are above average.
Exactly.
Their own stuff.
Trusted partner thing. There's a couple of things. I know we're going to get this ahead in a minute, but I just want to maybe pre-light this a little bit. Trusted partners have a provocative point of view.
Yeah.
They have a level of expertise. They're not afraid to challenge and speak truth to power too. Because one of the things, and I love my customers. I love the people I serve. And because of that, I bring an alternative view. I challenge
I have an alternative view.
Right.
I have one. I've got the expertise. I've been doing this for 35 plus years, right? So I've got some experience. I've got some scar tissue. We were laughing about that in the pre-meeting. But these trusted partners, you've got to have the experience, man. It's not something like you declare yourself trusted partner. You are knighted trusted partner. Right? It is given by the customer because you speak truth to power, because you have deep affection for them and want the best for them. So I just want to nail this a little bit because it's so easy. Oh yeah, I'm a trusted partner. Are you really?
That's what's coming next. So we're going to talk about it. Let's do a quick poll. Matt, let's do the poll to see how the participants would rank their sales force. So what the majority of your sales force falls in this category, not everybody, right? But if you say that the majority of my sales force are relationship managers or billboards or sales reps or consultants or trusted partners, let's see where we land on that. Cause I think you're making a really good point. And because people, what it goes, I think and this again, we're going to provide more help and to the participants on how do you know if you're really a trusted partner? What do you need to do? And what makes a trusted partner? But it's so much more than intent. What's one of the things we found when we did this research last year? Both the low performers and high performers were customer focused in their intent. Meaning, I want to help the customer. It was how they viewed helping the customer. Right. So listening to a personal story about what's happening in the office. Right, felt customer focused, but that wasn't helping their business. All right, let's see. Relationship managers.
I was the winner.
No, yeah, by the winner. Wow.
I knows.
Yep. Which that's not that surprising.
I also respect that it's 5% of the trusted partner because there are not many trusted partners out there.
No.
There are not many trusted partners. So I think everybody had a very honest assessment of their organization based on those numbers. But let's dive in, spend a little bit more time on what do we mean by trusted partner. So there's 3 drivers to trusted partner. One is they're other-centered. In other words, they are really serious about helping the customer achieve their desired destination, which is why they're not reactive, because they know that the customer needs their expertise, right, to reach their desired destination. They have a point of view, like you said. So they really care about it. And because they sincerely care about helping the customer achieve their business goals, not just their personal goals, but their business goals, they're trusted and they're other-centered. So we think of it, I kind of help tease that out a little bit more. Is you're other-centered if you're representing all options. Not only are you open to what's best for the customer, and a lot of times I like to ask the question of, like, what are all the customer's options? Because some of their options are not to work with you at all or work with the competition. Is it ever in the customer's best interest to not work with you? And a lot of times people are paused, like, that's one of the options, right? So we need to be able to present all options. What's the competition offering? What are we offering? What are all those options? And because our goal is to make sense and help guide them through all that. But we can't do that if there's only one option, our solution. It also releases pressure, right? And Andy, I love the way you talk about this as you talk about it as not having a destination. Unpack that a little bit.
So these terms are easy to give, like, a head nod, essentially, like I'm an other-centered person. Of course I am. But I mean, if you really think about this, and I fully agree with the, I would call it the Aslonian Is that a word? The Aslonian principle?
Sure.
No, but it now
Let's
is.
do word.
It's now a word.
Of being other-centered. And for me, the way I interpret it is their success is more important than my success.
And you have to
Right.
make that decision.
And you have to make that decision because all motive becomes known at some point, right? Motives are always made clear. So you really literally have their success, my customer success is more important than my success. And I know having sold technology for many years, it's been like, I am not the right answer for you. I'm truly not. I'm so grateful for this meeting. I do want to share with you, if you're open to it, here's some thoughts for you as you go through this process that makes sense, provocative point of view. But if you have, so this is for me, as you talk, the destination mindset. I'm glad that resonated, Tom. So many sales reps have this destination mindset. I got a meeting with Sally, the VP of IT, and I am going to sell her this new module that sits on top of her database and does whatever.
We just came out of a meeting and we're supposed to sell this thing and they're all pumping this thing. We got to start selling. We're a network company. We got to start selling security, baby.
Yeah, and Sally feels that immediately. But if I don't have a destination mindset, I know, because I'm a smart guy and I understand the industry, I know some of Sally's concerns anyway, automatically, just built in because I understand it. So I don't have this destination mindset. I have some open-ended probing questions. We talk about it. I feel for pain, the pain behind the pain, what's really dropping about it. But I don't have a destination of, I'm going to get Sally to buy this, or she's going to commit to the next step to prove whatever. I'm there to learn, which to me, curiosity is a huge thing. But curious people that don't have a destination mindset are safe sellers. People talk to them and they get information that other people don't get.
Yeah, which is so critical to influence, right? Because we miss that, like, because our values drive our questions, our motives drives our questions, it drives our process, right? So I was working with a seller not too long ago, and their questions were about, can we get this done by the end of the year? Can we get this done by the end of the year? Can we get this done by the end of the year? Can we get this? I'm like, and finally I said, why is it my best interest to close this deal by the end of the year? And it was like, it was just shock. And he's a good person. It's just, he had an agenda. He had a destination. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't close by the end of the year, right? There might be a other-centered reason for me, the buyer, to be able to buy. So great point. And I think this also, your values also determine your process, right? Almost every organization I work with, you look at their process, it's a seller-centric process, which makes sense because it should be intuitive to the seller, but it needs to be built around the buyer's journey. What stages does the buyer need to go through in order to evaluate the solution? And if you understand that, then all your recommendations are other-centered, and the customer is going to be willing to move forward, which means the deals don't stall. But if our process is around qualify, present, propose, negotiate, and close, that's all about us. That doesn't benefit, right? That doesn't benefit the seller. So let's keep.
Can I jump in here? Look, Matt, I saw Matt jumped on.
You're popping in. What's going on in the back?
Yeah, what's happening?
Cutting in here. We got a great question from Federica, who, and I think this is a great time to tackle as being a trusted partner. But what happens if the customer need is unknown even by the customer? As a trusted partner, you've got to have some insight into that, right?
That is perfect for number 2, right? We need to have the expertise to lead, right? Which means we need to help them figure out what they should do, because if we are experts in our organization and all we need to do is uncover what's happening in their organization, we're the ones that should be determining that anyway. Right. We should be helping them, right? Versus waiting for them to tell us what to do. Yeah, right? Because I mean, like, going back to my simple example about buying appliances, I've spent maybe in my life 2 or 3 hours of my entire life looking at appliances, right? So the people that are working with me, they should have years of experience doing that. So they should help me figure out, based on what I care about, what I need, what I should need. Randy, you wanted to pipe in.
Oh yeah, I know. And Tom, don't let me go 45 minutes on this one.
Okay.
It's Frederica. That is a fantastic question. I think this is, you look at the 4-layer cake, the 5-layer cake that we had before. This cuts consultant and trusted advisor away from everybody right away. Because here's what I believe. Because of our experience, it is actually our job to expose things that this person is not aware of as a problem, that what is hiding behind the corner, what the cost of inaction might be. And here's the great news about this. If you are so expert in your world and you can show me a problem that I wasn't aware that was meaningful, I immediately believe that you can solve it. So you expose something that's meaningful. So
your value goes up.
Right. You're now in the receptive zone. You're automatically in the receptive zone that we want to be. We don't be. So Frederica, it's almost a good thing, because if we're just like selling what someone's buying, it's hard to differentiate. But you can show a pain that someone is not aware of because of your experience. They're immediately like, whoa, that's a real thing. I got to deal with this thing. And because you brought it up, Frederica, I believe you can solve it. You're already at the 51-yard line, and I'm in receptivity mode. Tell me how I deal with this.
And let's connect it back to other-centered. If I'm open to all options, meaning I'm not trying to find a gap just so I can sell you something, and it's a curiosity, I'm curious to try to figure out what is best for them, and I don't have a destination already in mind, like you're going to end up needing my solution. They feel that, and they're willing to go through that process with you. If it's manipulative, meaning I already want it, I don't care what's going on in your organization, where we're going to land on is you're going to need my solution, then they're going to feel that, and then they're not going to sign up for it. And so that's how it all works together. Excellent. Excellent point. And I think the other key word to number 2 is lead. We should lead. We have to have the expertise, but we also should be the one to lead, because we should have, we've if whatever we're selling, whatever solution, that's our role. That's our job. That's all we do, right? The customer may be buying the solution for the first time, or maybe once or twice. But we've in our organization, in all the organizations we work, the collective experience, we should be the ones to lead that process. Let's quickly cover this, because we're going to dive a little bit into this. So here's, if you're thinking about what leaders need to, how leaders need to coach, how you need to train your sellers, they also need advanced capabilities. They're going to be trusted partners and earn a seat at the table and change beliefs and influence strategy. They need some advanced capabilities, right? And they need to learn how to influence that drives receptivity. And that's what we're going to talk about next. We're going to give you a framework for how to change the way reps communicate. They obviously also need to identify, connect, and align with key stakeholders, right? I'm sure that's obvious, but it's important. They move upstream. They don't just operate at the buyer level, right, or the operations level, or the end user level. They know how to work. They know how to gain access to the people that determine what will happen. They not only discover what the needs are for the solution, they discover organizational needs. And then lastly, this is something that was probably new for me as we were doing through the research tab. It was one of a couple of the Harvard professors we had on our podcast, and we interviewed, wrote a book, and another couple of guys that we talked to, is that everybody needs to be developing a custom solution. Everybody's bespoke. Every solution's going to be custom.
Yeah, that has definitely changed.
Yeah. You're going to learn some things. You can't just say, here's my presentation, here's my solution. What do you think? Everything is bespoke. Now, obviously there's degrees of customization, but everybody's going to have some unique need. We can't just do the standard stuff. So we need to have the ability to listen to what the customer's saying, really listen, adjust. And I like the way I think about it is just start over. Every customer is new, start over, and then think about what I need to recommend to them as if I've never worked with anybody. But we wanted to give you one model that we felt like it would kind of capture what reps need to be doing to drive receptivity, get more meetings, and prospect more effectively. So this is a framework that we developed that kind of captures really a unique way to communicate, but it's simple but not easy. So if you think about delivering again, and we're going to talk about this in context related to prospecting, getting a meeting, or in leading a meeting or influence, right? So this can be leveraged either way. The first thing we need to say to the customer, whether again, we're trying to get a meeting, break through the noise, or we're about to talk about one of the critical slides or make a critical point in a presentation or make a critical point about a solution or a recommendation, is we need to describe their point of view. We need to begin the sentence with "because you." If I begin this sentence with because you, the customer will always listen, right? They don't care about you, right? They care about them, right? So if I'm prospecting and I want to lead with something, I need to show them a picture of themselves. I don't need to show them a picture of me, right? When the brain's overwhelmed with information, they tune to two things: something they know, we tune into something we know we need, or something we don't understand, right? So we've got to, and if we've got to articulate what their world is, we got to articulate what's important to them, and start with their point of view. I'll give you a quick example, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. But I thought about this the other day. When you go pull up a YouTube video, you always get the commercials, right? Right. I always just skip the commercials. Well, all of a sudden I heard this commercial for Vital Reds. And the first thing they said was, do you have low energy? Are you over 40 and have lower energy? And I'm like, okay, yep. Mm-hmm.
But you're only 38. How in the world?
Yeah, I'm a little, but they described me to a T. They just describe, are you doing these things because you have low energy? Are you drinking the Red Bull? Are you drinking a lot of coffee? Are you doing these things? And do you see the energy? And here's what my head was doing. So as I was going to skip the commercial, I stopped because they were talking about me. And if you notice anything you pay attention to, it's because they're articulating your point of view, which is really critical when you're prospecting and you're trying to get a meeting, or when you're about to unpack a critical point. Guys, are you seeing this? And by the way, we're seeing this in AI. AI gets this. The problem is AI is generic.
Yep.
Are you seeing reps adjust to this? Meaning change the way they...
I'll let Randy go first.
No, I was going to say, I find, well, maybe, Tom, give you a very, very thoughtful answer. Maybe. I think the reps that are really aware of what's going on, the seismic shift that's going on, they realize, this fiscal year needs a better version of me than last fiscal year got. So I got to do some things differently. And I do see that there are reps out there that are like, especially like the tsunami of technology that's coming, I need to do something better so I can show up for the game better. But a lot of them are desperate. Well, how do I do it? Right. I know I need to do something better. How do I do it? And I think that's where it's critical for coaching, leadership coaching, to help these people out there, because I think there are a lot of people that want to do it better. They're told to do it better, but they don't know how to do it better.
Yeah, and I think because it's just a lot of work, honestly. But when I'm preparing for an important meeting, the hardest thing that I have to do is fill in the because. If I'm going to start the sentence with because you, if I'm speaking tomorrow at Chamber of Commerce trade show, and so I don't know their worlds, right? So the most difficult thing I did to prepare was just be able to, everything I pull up, say because you, and then fill in the blank. Because if I can't describe that, everything I say is not going to be relevant, or at least it's not going to capture their attention. So we got to start there. We got to first captivate their attention by starting with their point of view. Then we need to communicate a disruptive truth, right? A disruptive truth could be a stat, it could be a principle, it's a best practice, but it's disruptive. It's an unknown way and a better way, a surprising way to solve their problem that they're not aware of. Now, the cool thing about a disruptive truth is it immediately elevates you in the mind of the decision maker, right? Because the reason the most decision makers don't meet with sellers is because they think they don't have anything to say. Like, you need to go work with the buyers, people that buy stuff, right? But I'm a decision maker and I'm the one that's driving the business, and you don't really belong here, right? Because you really have no value to offer. You just rep, you're a rep, you rep your stuff, right? You're not a trusted partner. But when you communicate a disruptive truth, you're like, hey, I'm going to tell you something you don't know about a better way to solve your problem. That gets their attention. And when you're prospecting, like creating either it's a LinkedIn invitation or an email, that gets them to lean in. And the other thing is, you're not talking about your solution. You're just talking about truth. So this is what back to my little ad, this is what the disruptive truth was for Vital Red. He said, most people believe that in order to get energy, they need to take things out of their diet. I heard, can't eat the stuff I want. But actually, it's not about what you don't eat. You need to feed the cells. Cells drive your energy. And if you don't feed the cells, regardless of what you take out of your diet, you're not going to have energy. And I'm like, interesting. And they're not selling anything. They're just teaching me a different way to think about energy. Oh, that disruptive truth. You guys have any examples of disruptive truths that you've?
Tom, I think I would love to share some. I'm just worried about time a little bit. We've got about 5 minutes. We got to leave some time for Q&A.
Yeah, you've got a Q&A. I agree with that.
So,
all right, well, let's hit proprietary benefit, and then we'll go to our last slide. The last thing we need to be able to communicate is what's unique about us. What do we own? And that could be a who, what, or how. It could be who we are, it could be what we offer, or it could be how we implement it. Like in my example of the commercial that got my attention, the guy says, "I'm not a nutritionist. I'm a thoracic surgeon." I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So you're not one of those people just pushing vitamins or something. He also talked about what was proprietary about what they offered. But so what do we offer that's unique, that gives us a competitive advantage, that separates us from the competition? So as you think about how you're communicating, again, whether you're developing your position or, you're trying to position a meeting or unpacking a critical slide or a critical element, this is the counterintuitive way to talk, to teach your sellers how to talk. We've got to articulate the point of view of the customer, communicate something disruptive, and then talk about us and what's different about us. There's obviously more to know about how to capture what's on the customer's whiteboard, which is their point of view. But we certainly can offer more insights on that if you have questions about that in the future. All right, let's go to the last slide on how the leaders need to change. So we've talked about how sellers need to change with thinking about their role differently and how they need to communicate, change the way they're communicating. Leaders, they still have the same role. And this is the kind of the way I think about leaders. If you think about a leader dashboard, a sales leader, the center dial is results, right? And if results aren't achieved, something needs to change. It's either a desire problem, a productivity problem, or a capability problem, right? So if it's a desire problem, I need to lead. If it's a productivity problem, I need to manage. If it's a capability problem, I need to coach. So what's I think changing in the new reality, leaders have spent a lot of time, I think, was what we typically see, is that most managers are what I call two-dimensional. They spend their time focused on results and productivity. What are the KPIs and how are we doing? What's our number? And what's the KPIs, right? And so they don't really address the desire problem, and they probably really aren't addressing the capability problem. They just basically are managers. Right. And so to desire is really critical now, which I think most people have been somewhat successful by just living in two dimensions, results and capabilities. Here's what you need to be doing. I mean, results and managing. But what's happened is people are less and less motivated to change because change is harder. And so we need to spend more time, or at least be more effective at leading. And Randy, we had a conversation the other day about what people really want is critical to figuring that out. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, Tom and I were teasing this out a little bit over breakfast the other day. Just sharing. I haven't been in a leadership coaching role many times. So there's two things: there's what people want, and there's what people really want. We all say we want to lose weight, but what I really want is a dozen Oreo cookies.
Yeah.
Right? We all want to save for our retirement, but what I really want is a high-end performance sports car so my neighbors.
What I really want. Yeah.
And we always move towards what we really want. I think as leaders, we really need to know, what do my people really want? Because that's how I change their desire and I lead them effectively.
It's really, and I love saying this because, and I was taught this early in my career. When people aren't motivated, it's not a discipline problem, it's a wanting problem, right? We got to figure out what they want. So you think about your reps, they probably fall in three buckets. They're new reps, they're comfortable with the digital reality, and I call them the soundbite generation. They're great with texting and all the technology, but they're not very good at influence. They're probably not very good at building relationships. Then you got the complacent reps, the veterans who've always done it the same way. Now they have to change, and they may have ego problems because they have fear. or maybe the system's not a payoff, or maybe they have a competing belief. Or you've got the people that are embracing AI, right? But they're just leaning too much on it, and they're like, oh, great, this is going to automate everything. All of those challenges with all those categories of reps. And so we've got to really figure out what is it that they want and then connect change to it. But we've got to get better as an organization. Almost all sales organizations that we work with, we've got to get better at really figuring out how to turn that desire dial. Because if desire doesn't change, coaching is a waste of time. And let's talk about that for a second. So one of the things that I think our big truth about the research is that what's important about coach is that you actually have to coach. It's like coaching has 3 elements, right? We all know this. You got to diagnose, you got to observe, right? You've got to have an alignment meeting or a coaching session where you talk about what you observed and what are we going to do? And then you have to implement a development plan. You got to actually practice. What most people do when they coach is they just talk. Here's what I saw, consider this, or watch me. That doesn't change, right? So we've got to learn we've got to actually coach, which takes time, which is why the desire dial is so important. But the good news is, guys, is that this AI is really working. That was one of the things that we're seeing. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to share this stat. We have one of our tab, share the stat, and then we'll wrap up.
Oh yeah, this is our probably at least top 2 or 3 global clients that we work with. So this is a very large, top performing organization in the world. You would all know this company. They did a ton of analysis, and they work from these dials, and the highest performing sales leaders had the highest number of assessments, alignment meetings, and developmental activities.
They were coaching.
Yeah, they're coaching. They were actually doing what we're doing.
They weren't even measuring how well they did it. They just said, "Are you doing it?" They're actually people do. Every time I work with a ride with a sales rep, I always ask the question: "When's the last time your manager rode with you?" Which means observed you, like not been in a meeting with you, but like rode with you, observed, watched. I say, like, I think last year. It's people don't coach. Yeah. The other thing I want to say in closing out is AI works, right? Yeah. We need to leverage AI to help us diagnose, and we need to leverage AI to help the team practice. So we believe we're seeing 50% decrease in the amount of time a manager needs to spend or a coach needs to spend to develop their team, because the AI, we've developed tools now that we're seeing. It's crazy what we're seeing and how effective it is at identifying there's a gap or what the gap is, and then helping bridge that gap. Yeah. And the last thing I would say is we need to move away from just providing content as a course. Like we have all this online kind of courses. Everything's a course, versus making all of the resources that we have available to reps at their fingertip at the point of need. Not a course, but I use it all the time. And that is available to people. These are tools that are developed. We have a tool. I'm sure other people have these tools, but there's a new way to support reps, and I'm very excited about it. And of course, we'll have to talk about it on another podcast. Yeah, but I'm gonna stop here.
It's a game changer. I know we're wrapping up, but I mean, it is just, this could have the greatest impact on coaching ever. It doesn't take away coaching. It just makes you more efficient. I now can be better. I can do it more effectively. I can spend more time with the right people. And so stay tuned.
Well, the other thing that's great is that it's rep driven. Like the way that these tools are set up now, the rep gets what they want when they want it, versus here, you need to go learn this, check a box, and prove that you did it.
Yep. All right. Well, we've got 5 minutes.
I think we got 6
minutes. Sorry, Matt. Mike, we got 6 minutes for a little Q&A, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some great questions here, and I'm glad we just ended on the AI topic, because we have several people who've asked AI related questions. So I'm going to start you guys off with something existential here. This is a big one. Get ready. So Joel asks us, what are the skills and competencies that sales leaders need to develop in the future when AI is a team member and not just a technology? How do you lead the team when a team member isn't human, but it acts as if it were?
That may be the best question I've ever heard.
So that's a big one.
I think that's a great way to think. I'll start. I think that's a great way to think about AI. It's a team member.
Yeah.
I think of it as like when I look at this tool that we developed, we call it Aslan Plus. It's like adding a team member. It's like the leader has somebody on their team and says, "Hey, will you go assess these calls? Will you go listen to these calls? Will you answer these questions? Will you give them feedback? Will you do a role play?" And the team member says, "Sure. Anytime you want, I'll do it anytime you want with anybody you want."
Yep. And they never complain.
They
never
can be
complain.
anyone you want. They can take on any persona you want them to take on.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
And you feed them
because
the data. You feed it the data, so it's going to
pregame. Yeah, because you don't have to lead them. You don't have to coach them. You don't have to
train them, though. I mean, AI is a trainable technology, and I think that's the thing here, Matt, is how we train the AI. The AI engine has so much capability. How we train that AI agent, what data we put into it, what things we pull out of it. We are teaching it to refine what it does. So I think similar to a human, we still are going to train the AI because you're going to build your own, it's going to be a personal chat GPT. It's not going to be like global. You have your own thing and you're going to feed it data to Tom's point, and you're going to train it and you're going to ask for information from it, and it's going to train to the things that are important. And they are going to be receptivity, or you can train to receptivity oriented things, organizational goal things, and all that kind of stuff. So I think
they get smarter. They get smarter. We're watching coaching. I've been coaching for 30 plus years. I watched the AI Aslan Plus AI coach that we have been working with and teaching, and that AI coach is learned what we've learned quickly, and they get smarter. They get smarter. So I mean, it is really powerful.
So that is the skill, I think, Joel, to answer your question. It's about learning how to teach these engines, learning how to teach the tools, what information to feed them. Prompt engineering is key. Maybe not you specifically, but someone on the team, but knowing how to feed these tools the information. That's a great answer. Ryan also asked a question about AI. What's the proper way to use AI for prospecting at the executive level? Are there any specific tools that you would recommend or worth mentioning?
Oh, I'll speak to what the tool can do, and I've seen different companies leverage this, but the tool can say it can access data that's private. It can access public data. So, like, let's say you want to meet with a CIO at a company about a certain solution. You can say, "Tell me what's on the whiteboard of the CIO at this type company, and why they would be potentially interested in XYZ solution." It can pull all that up together. But here's what I want to say to the reps that are AI savvy. That's lazy, right? That's a starting point. Right now, I've got to make it very custom and make it specific to the person I want to work with, because if I don't, it's going to look fake. Like people know, they smell it, they can see that it's a fake image, it's a fake copy. So we've got to do that. Anybody want to comment on tools that help them do that? I know we have one, but
yeah, Randy, you have anything on that?
Well, I was just going to, I mean, you kind of made this point, Tom. I think it's critical to realize AI is an input, not an output, not an endpoint, right?
Yeah.
If you're letting AI write your emails, if you're letting AI do all your research, it should inform you. Like I asked the same question of ChatGPT and Perplexity and maybe another platform, and I see what they come back, and then I synthesize it. That keeps my brain working, which is important in my advanced years. But I think we as salespeople need to do that. You can also role play with these AI engines. If I'm meeting with Tom Stanfield on this topic, how is he likely to respond?
Yep.
AI will tell you.
Yeah. I was going to say, but what I've seen not work is, I mean, like I saw in the chat, someone said, "Well, I've had bad experience with cold calling using AI to cold call." I agree with you. Because to your point, it is a tool that we can gather information that will help us bring disruptive truths or understand point of views and things like that. But that's how we're seeing it being used. So
I think we've got time for one more question. Before we go, I just want to answer something. Someone asked, will we receive a recording? Yes, this will be available on demand. An email will be going out tomorrow with a recording in it, as well as a survey to let us know what you thought about today's webinar. When you leave the session, you'll have that survey pop up. We'd love it if you would just take 30 seconds to fill that out.
Yeah, and
with
one of the things, Matt, too, is if we can hang on for another 5 minutes and answer more questions, if people want to hang on or they want to jump, they can jump.
Perfect. Let's do that. Okay, so let's move into Carl's question. What is the one key to developing a new rapport with top level leaders of a growing company, as opposed to a company that's struggling or is just static? But when we're looking at growing companies, what would you say the biggest key to developing new rapport with their top level leaders would be?
I'm a little confused by the question. Are you saying internally, like Randy, it looks like you've got a thought.
Well, so we answer the question, and you can tell if we understood the question. So to me, I would say, and this is a broad statement. We must speak the language of the senior leadership, right? So if I am talking to a high growth PE-backed company and I'm talking about something that they don't care about, like optimizing whatever, they're going to laugh me out of the room, right? But if I'm talking to so it's going to be, they're going to care about things like actions that drive valuation, right? If I do this type of an activity, I'm going to get better multiples on valuation. They're going to be, this person gets my language. Whereas I'm talking about how to, clean rust out of the washing machine, they're going to blow me out of things. So I think the key is, and this is relevant to every leader that you meet, to be considered a peer executive, you must speak that language in context of their experience.
Yeah, kind of going back to the expertise to lead, Randy. If you
Yeah.
have a different point of view, it needs to be vetted. Like, you need to understand what's on their whiteboard, how they're measured, what their strategy is, what's important to them. You need the same thing we talked about. I need to be able to articulate their point of view and then communicate something that they haven't considered, which elevates me in their mind.
Which is what Carl was just saying here, discovering
Yeah.
hidden pain points. That's what that is. Yeah, I think it all goes back to, if you want to connect with higher level people, it's not that complicated. You do that iframe that Tom talked about, their point of view, disruptive truth, and your proprietary benefit. And that's all about figuring out what's on their whiteboard so that it's relevant to them. If that is, in all of our years, that changes the game. Like, people start getting meetings with people who've never gotten meetings with before. Great question.
Excellent. Excellent. So Maria asks us, this is a great question. As someone new to sales, what is the one key skill or habit you recommend focusing on first? And she's asking because over time, she knows we develop ingrained habits that might impede our ability to close more deals. So what do you think is essential for a new salesperson to tackle first?
Anybody want to tackle that
Great
first?
question.
I'm going to go with learn.
Learn.
Study, learn. Because you cannot be a person with a provocative point of view. You cannot lead someone. You cannot do anything unless you just know a lot.
Yeah, I'll go, and then Tom we'll let you bring home the gas. But I always tell anybody new, and it really feeds into what Randy's saying. We talk about you engaged, our capabilities are engage, discover, build value, advance, right? If you think about the whole sales process. I want you to spend your time in discovery, which is learning about customers, like having your focus on learning more and more about your customers. Do like Randy said, learn on your own about them. But every time you have an interaction, be about them, finding out where their pain points are, what they care about, what's on their whiteboard. I think that's the greatest thing you can do to kickstart your career in sales.
Amen.
Tom?
All right. Oh, Tom, did you have something?
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback on Tab. I think I want to give a tactical response, which is it's aligned with Tab. We teach something called Take the Trip, which it's you have a point of view, all right, and this is what I'm supposed to talk about. This is how I'm measured, and they have a point of view. And when we start, we really are pretty clueless on the other person's point of view. Because we're new in the role and we don't understand their whiteboard. And so we can be intimidated by the fact that we really don't know what questions to ask or feel stupid or uncomfortable. We don't know how to respond. I would say take the trip, like put your agenda aside, ask questions you don't know the answer to, and be willing to learn, right? Because if you do that, I always say this, you do that in 3 months, you'll be smarter than all the other sales reps. Because most people just get really good about what they know, get good at what they know, and versus really understanding the other person's point of view. And the other thing I would say, and I think this is the most important thing anybody can do to get better, is seek feedback. Proactively ask people to give you feedback.
I agree with that.
And that is something that people do not do. And we all have blind spots. And if we get people to talk to us, people who love us, who we trust, and say, when you do this, this is how it comes across, or if that changes everything. That's the number
That's
one thing anybody can do to get better.
that's so hard because our egos often stand in the way of that, right? Because it
Yeah.
hurts. If you're telling me, hey, here's a way I think you could do this better, or I noticed this, I don't want to hear that about myself. I want to think that I'm doing everything well, but there's a certain amount of self-awareness you have to be able to accept that feedback. And it is hard. It's a skill you have to develop to be able to accept that sort of feedback.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
All right, we got one more for you guys. One more. This is a fun one from Ryan. He said, fun one for the presenters. What opening cold call script would leave you the most receptive if someone called you out of the blue asking for a future meeting? What would you find? What would you be receptive to?
Are you talking about like what we would be receptive to?
Yeah, if someone called you, right? If someone called you as seasoned sales pros.
Yeah, well, that's easy for me because I mean, no one ever does it. If someone did research and knew what my big initiative was that was on my whiteboard at the moment and said, hey, Tab, because right now you are focused on growing your internal sales team and figuring out some, had really connected and talked to somebody to know exactly what was on my whiteboard, I would talk to them. They would get my attention.
Your brain has to.
I can't help myself.
You can't, your brain will tap you on the shoulder and say, I have, if you look at my office over the left to my left is my whiteboard. In the left-hand corner, it's been there for 2 years, is the top 3 initiatives that I have. You say anything related to those top 3 initiatives, I will talk to you. I will stop. I will read your email. Now, the next thing you need to say is intelligent, because this is where AI has gotten good. They'll say something, and then you start to read, and then it's like, oh, this is a waste of time. That's why the next thing we need to say is a disruptive truth, and then we need to communicate what we offer that's unique, right? So that's where you blew all 3 of those elements, you're going to get a meeting. And the question is do you know what's on their whiteboard? That's a conversation for another day, but there is a way to find that out.
Yep.
My add to that would be, and this kind of a general statement, I absolutely agree with what Tab said and Tom said. If you need to know something about me, if you've done no research, you're dead, right? And then if you ask me something that's publicly available, then you're also dead. Don't be stupid. But I think, and this is a mistake I made a long time in my early career, and I would just say this for everyone. The goal of your first engagement is not to educate. It is to evoke. It is to provoke. It is to create curiosity. Does this guy or gal know something that I need to know?
Yep.
So that question, that comment, hey, because you're trying to do this, I have seen. I'd like to help you avoid that. Is this a relevant problem for you? Create some curiosity, like, is this a person of influence that I'm talking to? That puts you at the consultant level, that puts you qualifies you for the trusted advisor level. The other levels don't do that.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, I think that is a fantastic way to wrap this up. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. We still have most of the attendees who have hung on, so the conversation was good. They were interested in what you had to say. They wanted to get to the Q&A. Thank you, everyone, for being here. What a great time we had. Again, when you leave today's webinar, you will get a survey pop-up. If you could just take 30 seconds, let us know what you thought of that. Tomorrow, the email will come out with the on-demand recording, as well as some downloadable content, so you want to make sure that you be on the lookout for that. We will be doing another one of these soon, so stay tuned. And until then, everyone, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks
for joining us.
Thanks, gang.
Thanks all.